Welcome to Surviving on Shoestrings with Donna Miller. Together we'll look outside the box to stretch what we have, make do, and get by with humor, style, and a smile. And now welcome your hostess,
Welcome
Donna
to a
Miller.
new episode of Surviving on Shoestrings. I'm your host, Donna Miller, and I'm very excited today because we're going to bring you some information about the school year, the spending habits, just some things that I know you've had probably a lot on your mind the last few weeks after school's gotten started, and we always talk about budget. We always talk about stretching things and making them last here. But today I want to bring on a savings expert, and I'm very delighted to have Trae Bodge here with me. She's the senior lifestyle editor for Real Deal by Retail Me Not, an online magazine developed by digital offers designation retailmenot.com. And as a writer and broadcast personality, Trae shares her expertise and her insights on topics ranging from budget-friendly holiday gifts to family finances. She's been featured as a consumer spending expert in numerous media outlets across the country, including The Today Show, Steve Harvey, one of my favorites, CNN, and HLN and Fox. So I'm very delighted to have with me today Trae Bodge, and we're going to bring her in and make sure we've got a good connection. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. I hear you as well. Very delighted to have you here today. I know my listeners are going to be thrilled to hear what you have to share because you've got some great insights. I'm thrilled that you're here today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. This is one of my favorite topics, so I'm thrilled.
Awesome. Well, now, you conducted a recent survey on back-to-school shopping, and are people shopping earlier or later these days?
Well, retailmenot.com conducts this survey every year. We always want to have a sense of when consumers are beginning their shopping, how much they're planning to spend. And we found that this year, consumers started back-to-school shopping a little bit later than they had the year before. 1/3 of consumers ended up waiting until August, which we thought was very interesting.
That is interesting. Why do you think that consumers didn't spend money till August?
Well, I think there are a couple of factors, and what I found when I was researching the retail landscape, a lot of retailers, particularly retailers in the office supply space like Office Depot, Office Max, Staples, they started incentivizing consumers to shop back to school as early as late June, simply because it's kind of a dead space for office supplies, and so they were trying to kick back to school shopping into high gear a little bit. And while some consumers bit, of course, consumers, the most part, really did start shopping for back to school in earnest in early August. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. I think that obviously, like you were saying, consumers are on a budget these days. They're really trying to stretch their dollar and be mindful of how much they spend. And so I think consumers have become very smart, and they are looking for the best deal, the biggest deal prior to making their purchase. So I think consumers are really on the hunt for those great deals. And then also for states who were having tax-free holidays that typically happen around back-to-school time, I think a lot of consumers were waiting for that tax-free holiday to happen. And the majority of them this year seem to happen in early August. So I think a lot of consumers were waiting to take advantage of that tax-free opportunity as well.
Oh, that's a really good point because I remember when those actually started, the tax-free weekends and things like that. Did they just do them later this year, or did you notice that that was a big influx on that time, like during the tax-free? That's when everybody really did their shopping?
Yeah, it tends to fluctuate from year to year, and sometimes it's late July, sometimes it's early August. I saw it happening in early August, and I don't know why that was happening necessarily. But again, I think the consumer was really holding back. They didn't want to jump too early into their back-to-school shopping. And what we've seen historically in terms of the depth and the breadth of coupons and savings opportunities is that they tend to increase as we get closer to back-to-school. Retailers obviously have a lot of inventory in place for back to school, and as back to school time gets closer, retailers will start discounting more aggressively to try to clear that merchandise for the holiday season. Here we are in mid-September, which is actually still a really good time to do back to school shopping, particularly in the apparel space. Obviously, a lot of the notebooks and folders and all those great supplies are going to be pretty cleaned out. I received my back to school fly list from school quite late, actually. My daughter started school right after Labor Day, and we received her supply list then. And so I ran out to the store thinking that I was going to get great deals because of all the research I've done. Everything's very heavily discounted around that time, but a lot of the shelves were very bare. So I think in terms of supplies, there might not be much there, but there is still a lot of apparel out there, and particularly if you have teens or tweens, they're looking around, they're seeing what their friends are wearing, what their classmates are wearing, and they'd have some requests for certain trendy items. And so if you did hold back and didn't complete all of your apparel shopping for your teens or tweens in particular, now might be a really good time to take advantage of even deeper discounting on clothes.
That's a great idea. And you're right. They get there a few weeks. They kind of start seeing what everybody's wearing. And that does influence how you shop when you've got kids and teens.
Definitely, and that's something I always advise consumers, that if they are doing their back-to-school shopping in July and August, to kind of hold back on spending all of their budget and hold back on clothes in particular, because their kids quite often will want something in September, and there will be great sales available.
Mm-hmm. You know, when you buy what they'll actually wear, your money's actually gone a longer way than buying just what's clearance off the rack just because you saw it when it comes to clothes and teenagers. Definitely. Are parents doing a lot more shopping online or actually going into the stores these days?
Well, this is something that I'm always very interested to see, and a lot of retail experts, earlier in 2014 were saying, is in-store shopping dead, and what's going on with the malls, and the traffic's down a little bit. But I actually think that in-store shopping is not dead, and it will never die. This is the way we've shopped for decades, and consumers really like that touch and feel experience of in-store shopping. We do find, however, that now that consumers are becoming more comfortable shopping online, particularly those late adopters, like your older consumers who might not have felt comfortable shopping online until maybe recently, we are seeing online shopping experiencing a bit of an uptick. So based on our data from this year, we found that about 60% of parents plan to shop in store versus 72% last year. So that's a pretty big dip. However, we will obviously continue to shop in store. For back to school in particular, that really is a time to have that touch and feel with your child in the store, trying on clothes. Obviously, they're growing like weeds, and you want to make sure you're getting the right sizes, and you want them to choose the folders that they like and all those good things. So I don't think in-store shopping is going away. However, online really is carving out its own prominent space in the shopping mix.
That's interesting. And you're right. There is something about even my kids that are older, they're in their 20s, they remember the feel for back-to-school shopping. There's a feeling in the air,
Yes.
And even if when they were in year-round school at one point, we homeschooled at one point. I mean, they've had all of the different types of schooling, but there is a feeling. And they walked into stores with me this past few months and said, "Gosh, I remember getting your new pack of crayons. I remember." There's a feel. There's an emotional connection.
I love that whole experience. And back to school, I always remember fondly. I love school supplies and so excited to pick out my notebooks and my Trapper Keeper every year. And for clothes, too. Kids are most likely getting new clothes, and that's always really exciting for kids who love clothes, and so many do. And so I don't think that in-store shopping is ever going to go away. But online shopping, it really does offer such a speed and a convenience, and the consumer can really shop around and comparison shop, look for the best prices, look for coupons. So we have a lot more control, I think, with online shopping, because you're not fighting those crowds and you're not in store with hundreds of people. And so the online shopping really has its own set of benefits.
Yeah, you can kind of pick and choose what you're going to get in the store and what you're going to get online, because wide-ruled notebook paper is wide-ruled notebook paper anywhere you get it. So you might as well get it online.
Absolutely.
But a pair of nice shoes, totally different story. You need to be with the body that's going to be wearing them and, see how they fit. So, yeah, you're right. They go hand in hand, but it's interesting to see the online shopping's picked up this year.
Yeah, it definitely has. And, I think online shopping for back to school is really handy around this time of year. Obviously, we're mid to late September. We're looking for maybe another pair of those jeans that fit your daughter really well. You tried them on in store and they're perfect. Now is a great time to hop online and look for those deals on an extra pair. So that's what online shopping is really good for, particularly in the apparel space.
Well, now, what other things are parents still shopping for after the few weeks of school began?
I really think it's mostly clothes. However, there are some shoppers still out there looking for textbooks for those college students who checked out a couple classes and have decided to stick to those classes and have not bought their textbook yet, now is a really good time to get discounted textbooks. I would recommend, if you have children going to college, to kind of hold off as long as you can on purchasing that textbook, because you don't know if your child's going to drop that class. And you've gone to all the trouble to get the textbook in advance, and you've paid top dollar for it most likely. It's always good to hold back if you can. Obviously, some classes require you to have that textbook on the first day. In that case, you want to be very careful and make sure your child is chosen wisely.
Right. Well, some schools will not buy back the textbook once it's left the building. I mean, not the same at the same price. You're not going to return.
That's correct.
Some will.
There are a lot of really good online services for buying textbooks. Chegg.com is one of them. It's a good kind of selling and reselling site. Also, individual colleges quite often have Facebook pages where you can post a book that you don't need anymore, and you can say, I have a brand new book for this class, and not even open, and this is how much I'm asking for it, and you can kind of create your own little market that way too.
That's a really good idea, just especially if you have a school that's not real keen on purchasing it right back at the at a decent rate. So it's probably a great idea. What are the most important factors that influence parents on what they buy for back to school?
Well, we found in our recent survey at Retail Me Not that nearly 70% of consumers say that cost is top of the list. And also, a lot of parents do set budgets for back to school. So about 50% of consumers said that they will only buy an item if it falls within their budget, which is obviously a really responsible way to shop. 44% of consumers would only buy something if it was on sale, which I thought was very interesting. And 25% said they would buy an item only if it had a coupon. Now, I think it's really smart to look for coupons for everything that you buy, particularly for those bigger ticket items. For instance, if your school is requiring your child to have a desktop or laptop or a tablet, for those big ticket items, definitely look for ways to save first before buying, and hold out if you can. With clothes and then office supplies and things like that, you might not be able to hold out for that offer, but it's always good to look for one first, I think, as a rule of thumb.
Yeah, that's a good point. Those big ticket items are, something you've got to see where you can save some money so that you can spend it in another area. And usually the big ticket items are something you can find some kind of discount for.
Right. If you can save 10% off of a laptop or a desktop, that's nothing to sneeze at. It's absolutely worth the effort to look for it.
I would spend the time looking for that necessarily more than 10% off a pair of socks.
Yeah.
Time well spent. Now, as far as this is part of my favorite thing, I guess because we did homeschool for a good bit, teachable moments. Are there some things that you can do with your kids, lessons around shopping and spending during this time of year especially?
Definitely. I think back to school is prime time for teachable moments for your kids. You can't expect your children, once they leave the home, to have all of the financial knowledge they need unless you've contributed to that knowledge. And back to school provides a great framework for teaching your kids lots of important lessons, one of which is budget. So if you can set a budget for each child, bring them with you or go online with them, help them choose and participate in the shopping process so they don't feel like they're doing everything sort of behind their back or without them. I think kids over 7 or 8 years old, they have very specific tastes. So you want to allow them to choose a little bit. And then you can show them how that individual purchase affects the budget. If they want those name brand sneakers versus maybe a generic pair of sneakers, if they want that name brand hoodie versus the one from the store where it's on sale, show them the impact so they can really see and they can make better choices. And then the other thing I like to offer is for kids who want something very specific, like a name brand item that might be higher priced, allow them to contribute. If you've set a certain budget for sweaters, for instance, and they want something that's a little bit more expensive, allow them to contribute some of their babysitting money or some of their birthday money to get the thing that they want. And then they'll appreciate that item even more, but also feel the personal impact of that purchase, which I think is a really important lesson for kids when they ultimately go out into the world.
Oh, I could not agree with you more. I think that's absolutely a fantastic idea. you'll find that the kids will take better care of those pairs of shoes they pitched in to get, or, they won't lose the backpack that was extra special that they paid a portion of quite as easily. I'm not saying that won't happen, but when they know they've had to buy into it, they have a better understanding of maybe what their parents go through, because, what if you have 3 or 4 kids you're doing this for? Then they all start to understand, wow, you're doing it 4 times. I'm just doing it once. They have a better understanding monetarily, and you're right, appreciation for what they have. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that kids these days, especially, in the United States for the most part, kids have what they need. And I don't think that a lot of kids understand the value of that in this country, that there is breakfast available for them when they're sitting at the table, that they have clothes to wear to school. My daughter is 8, and it's so important to me that she understands that the fact that she has 3 meals a day and a snack if she's hungry and shoes to wear, these are all things to really be grateful for. And, she has a lot of wants and needs. She's a very stylish girl. She has her own tastes, and for instance, she wanted an extra pair of shoes for school, and I said, we've already maxed out on our budget for back to school, so you have some leftover birthday money from the summer. You're welcome to use your own money. And we went out with her gift card, and we shopped around, and we bargain shopped, and we looked for coupons, and we found the Converse high tops that she absolutely had to have, and we got them on sale, and she cherishes those shoes more than anything she owns because she participated in that process. So I think it's a really good lesson for kids.
Well, I think that's fantastic. Well, this is actually a great place to take a quick break for the word from our sponsors, because it touched on something that wasn't even monetary. This ingrained something deeper in your children, and you get to be a part of that while you're shopping for school. So we'll let you guys ponder on that while the sponsors say a little bit, and we're going to be back with Trae and talk about some more things about budgeting and spending for this year for back to school. We'll be right back after this message.
Do you have your free digital subscription to Prepare Magazine yet? If not, then hurry over to preparemag.com and start getting each monthly issue sent directly to your inbox. It's easy. All you have to do is go to preparemag.com, enter your name and email address, and you're subscribed. Consider signing up for the premium membership for past issues and exclusive resources. Visit preparemag.com and choose the option that's most valuable to you. Prepare Magazine, encouraging, empowering, and enriching your journey.
Welcome back to the last half of our show.
We're here with Trae Bodge. I'm just excited at all the extra input that she's had. We're not just talking about trends and things that have happened, but on things that have a deeper level of training your children and enjoying that moment of being able to go shopping with them, getting them to buy into, this budgeting plan. We're all kind of in that same boat, stretching what we have, regardless of what we make. I think everybody, it's kind of upped the game the last few years on trying to make what you have last longer. And, what about those things we don't expect, Trae? What about the stuff the extracurricular things, like I'm going out for cheerleading, or, we've got a field trip and it costs $10. That's your second week of school. What's your survey find out about that kind of thing?
Well, I was really curious to see the results of this question in particular, because I think that a lot of parents, especially parents of younger kids who are just starting public school or private school at the kindergarten level, for instance, I think that a lot of parents are caught off guard by how much more money they need to put out there. Myself, when my daughter started kindergarten and was leaving a private pre-K, I was so excited because I thought, oh, now she's finally free. My tax dollars at work, I'm so happy. But, I was so stunned by all the fundraisers and the extracurricular activities and all those things that you want to be involved with as a parent, all the things you want your child to be involved with, they all cost money. Mm-hmm. And so we asked this question. We wanted to find out what families anticipate spending this year during the school year just for extracurriculars, and we found that parents are spending on average about $400 on extracurricular activities, and that includes things like athletics, music, theater, fundraisers. All of that rolled into that big ball is about $400 for the school year, which is really substantial.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that parents were prepared and anticipated this level of spending?
I don't think so, particularly for those parents of younger kids who are fresh into school. I think that you can really get caught off guard by those extracurricular costs, in particular parents of athletes. There are so many fees that come into play, and these days schools aren't able to furnish a lot of the supplies that kids need. They used to maybe provide the uniform, and sometimes they don't anymore because they're not able to, and that expenditure gets passed down to the parents. So if your child is involved in a number of sports throughout the year, it can really be expensive for them to participate.
Yeah, definitely. And then you tack on, they have to have a physical or, other things that just really they do become the parent's responsibility, or they always have been, but you add them to the other stuff that is not being covered. It can be kind of a surprise, especially if you're not prepared for it. How are these expenditures affecting the parents then?
Well, we found that 3 in 4 parents that we surveyed have spent less on something for themselves, specifically because of the education costs that they were paying for their children. We wanted to find out, obviously, what those things were that parents were having to cut back on, and parents are mostly cutting back on things like clothing and shoes for themselves, the luxury of dining out, and also vacations. And so these expenditures really impact what parents can spend on themselves on a day-to-day basis.
Well, and I was actually thinking this when you first started talking about the surprise dollars for the school year. Are there ways that parents can actually save on some of these things, on the school-related costs?
Some of them yes, and some of them no. I mean, there are ways to save on certain things like sporting equipment. If your child needs new cleats for soccer or shin guards, things like that, you can definitely look for savings, look for sales and coupons. So I would definitely do that as a parent. However, there are some things you can't save on, like uniforms, for instance, or fundraisers. And so it becomes very murky territory in terms of what your budget is, and these extracurriculars really cut into it. So my advice to parents who might be on a tighter budget would be to set some limitations around what your children can participate in. And, as a parent, it's very hard to do that. It's very hard to say, no, you can only play one sport per season, or you can only be involved in one creative activity. However, if you're on a budget, that's really what it boils down to. And I do think, though, that we were talking about teachable moments earlier. I think this is another opportunity for a teachable moment. You don't want to restrict your child, restrict them from exploring things that they might be interested in. However, if your child is a creative type and wants to take chorus and drama and dance, maybe you can only afford 2 of those things. And so you sit down with them and you help them prioritize and say, let's do chorus and dance this year because that's the thing that you're the most interested in. And then maybe next semester you reevaluate and say, do you want to continue taking those tap dancing lessons, or do you want to try drama instead? So I think it's a really good conversation to have with your kids. I don't think that you should allow them to do every single thing they want to, for so many reasons, for the expenditure, also for overscheduling, and you want them to have some downtime as well. And obviously we want to prevent any sort of sense of entitlement a child might have, like, oh, I can do everything I want. I don't think that's a smart. You're not raising a smart child that way, because when they go out into the world, they're not going to be able to do everything they want to do. Right. So I think these are really good conversations to have early on.
That's an excellent point. I mean, it's very akin to the shopping habits and teaching them good habits when you go shopping with them. But it is, it's a tug and pull. You want to broaden your children's horizons so they can find what they're gifted in and find what they find joy in, and develop those talents that they've been blessed with. But on the other hand, if they're spread so thin and you're running the gas out of the van to take them everywhere, you're actually going to have a very fed up and, the jack of all trades, master of none, a child that might actually be frustrated because they think they've got to do it all, or they think in order to be accepted they've got to do it all. And that's, as you grow to be an adult, you find out that's not true. It's not possible.
Yep, absolutely. So I would so strongly advise for parents to have those conversations with their kids and help their kids set priorities.
That's excellent advice. Well, what do you recommend to the parents who are on a tight budget? I was also thinking, how can you save up for the surprises? I don't know that sometimes it's even possible. But do you have any recommendations for people who are on a tight budget?
I do. I mean, for school, if you can, set aside a little bit of money each month throughout the year for an extracurricular rainy day fund, if you will. That way, if you do have an unexpected need, if they grow out of the shoes that they need for basketball, for instance, you maybe have an option. You have a little bit of money in your budget. But also take advantage of other options that are available in your community. My daughter's school has a swap every year, and so you'll see uniforms there and shin guards and a lot of those things that your child might need. And kids grow so quickly, so it's really important to take advantage of those things. A lot of communities have email listservs that you can belong to on Yahoo groups, and those are really great places to look for certain things. You can post something and say, hey, my son just grew out of his basketball sneakers that he barely wore, and now he needs this size. Does anyone want to do a trade? I mean, that your community is there for a reason. So it's a great opportunity to reach out and connect with people in your community, but also you might have something that they need and vice versa.
That's a great idea. It's a lot more interactive than just, I've got to save some money. I think that's building a tighter community, and that helps your children as well. So that's a fantastic plan. Wonderful. Well, now, as we face school starting, I bet there were a lot of parents that were just kind of happy to get a little bit of a breathing room after this. I had a friend whose mom used to run the flag up the pole and walk to the end of the driveway and clap as everyone walked at school. It was hilarious. She had 9 children, so I can imagine she was happy for her house to get empty again. But I can see her to this day. She'd stand out at the end of the driveway and just clap as we all walked. She was so excited. Any word on that in your survey?
That is hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, isn't it great?
I love that so much. I was so curious to find out were parents really happy when their kids were going back to school. And as a parent, I love spending time with my daughter in the summer and having all that kind of loose time, but I also work. So having that time to spend with her is difficult for those long 2.5 months. And so by the time school starts, I am relieved and I am happy to get her back on a schedule. And I think that kids, especially younger kids, really respond well to a schedule and the structure that school offers. And so, I was so curious to ask this question. We found that 91% of parents admitted to having their kids go back to school. And, namely because getting back to that regular schedule, having a little time to themselves, quiet during the day, and also kind of less pressure not to keep their kids occupied during the day. Because a lot of camps for younger kids in particular, your kid might be in a full day of school, but a lot of summer camps are only half day. And then what do? You have to find maybe a babysitter, or you have to take some time off and take your kid to the pool and arrange play dates. And there's a lot of effort that goes into all of that. And you want your kids to have a great summer, and you want to have a great summer with them. But not all of us have the flexibility in our schedules to do everything that we want to do.
I think all of this even applies to homeschooling, because a lot of our listeners are homeschoolers. And I can remember the period of time where we homeschooled till graduation when my kids were older. We had 2 rules, basically, and that was we were only allowed certain breaks because the structure is actually helpful. Even my most creative child still needed a big corral. I mean, her corral was really big. She was very free-flowing, but she had boundaries. And when the structure came back, it was kind of like a breath of fresh air, because everyone knew this is how it ran. Vacations were vacations, and they were a little bit of a free-for-all and no real structure. Everybody had to figure it out. But when school started, even if you were homeschooling, there was structure. And I think kids thrive in a certain amount of structure. They need it. It helps them feel secure. So I think you're right. And it does give us a little bit of, oh, good, they're busy here.
Yeah. Exactly. I can take a breath.
I know. And not the mom. That kind of stops when they've got something to do. Well, this has been some great information, and I appreciate you coming on to share this with everyone. I want to reiterate, where do people need to go to connect with you, to find out more about what you do? I mean, as the senior lifestyle editor for Real Deal by Retail Me Not, where can we follow along more that you have to say?
Well, you can definitely find me on The Real Deal by Retail Me Not. You just go visit retailmenot.com and click on blog, and I have my own page where all my articles are. And then I would highly recommend checking out the other writers on the blog as well. You will find lots of great content there, from gift guides and product roundups, but also personal finance advice and interesting trends with clothing and just everything that you would need from a good lifestyle daily. And then retailmenot.com, the site itself, we have 500,000 coupons on the site at any given time. So prior to shopping, in-store or online, it's always worth checking out the site to see if there's a coupon available. You can search by category, for instance, sneakers, or you could search by retailer, for instance, Macy's. And so it's a great hub for all of those good things.
Oh, that's awesome. I appreciate you verbalizing it, because we do have listeners from iTunes, and they may not be on the show page, although we will put the links of where to find Trae and her blog and the other great blogs at Retail Me Not. The link will be here on the show page as well, but I appreciate you reiterating it, because somebody may be driving in their car and have enjoyed the show, and now they know where to go. Thank you.
Right. You can also find me at Trae Retail Me Not on Twitter if you're a Twitter follower.
Oh, cool. Okay. We can put that on the show page, too. Thank you so much.
That would be great.
Well, I appreciate you being here. Our time has drawn to a close. You're a very, very busy woman, and I appreciate you taking the time out to speak to the listeners here of Surviving on Shoestrings on the Survival Mom Radio Network. And hopefully, maybe after holiday shopping is over, you can come back and give us an update after you take a breather in January.
I would love that.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Trae. We'll speak again soon.
Sounds good. Look forward to it.
For now, this is another episode of Surviving on Shoestrings. I'm your host, Donna Miller. Bye-bye.
Bye. You've been listening to Surviving on Shoestrings with hostess Donna Miller. Tune in each week for a new show that will help you enjoy frugal survival with humor, style, and a smile.